Are we recording today?
We are. I'm recording everything.
Okay. All right. Are we good to go?
We're good to go. Inventory.
All right. So when it comes to inventory in AVImark, basic functionality of it, when we open up your inventory list, you'll have your different categories listed over here to the left. And as you select those, your items in said categories listed over here to the right. Now, whenever you're creating new items, all you're doing is simply selecting the category that you want those to be in, and then over to the right, doing your classic AVImark right-click New. Now, when this window opens, in here, you have to have, your items all have to have their own special unique code. So this code wouldn't be able to be used anywhere else in AVImark in any of the other three lists: treatments, problems, or diagnosis. You would get a message if you tried to use a code that's already being used whenever you hit OK, so it wouldn't even allow you to save it. But let's say if we're making a new item, so to speak, we're typing in the code, and then in the description, we are typing in the name of the item. I think I spelled that wrong, but bear with me, guys. Then at that point, you've got your on hand here, where you're telling the program how many sellable units of this item you currently have on hand. Then in your location, this is really just an FYI field for you guys. If you have products stored in different areas of the clinic where this item could be found. And then here you have your action codes. Your action codes, when assigned to an item, just tell AVImark how to treat it. Now, when we click on this drop-down, there's a lot of action codes in here, and some of them pertain more to treatments as opposed to inventory items. So we're going to talk about the ones that you're going to be using most frequently. First and foremost, you have the A action code, which when given to an item, is going to automatically prompt for a drug label. Your C action code will mark an item as a controlled substance. Anytime you mark an item with this C action code, AVImark will begin to track every time its on-hand changes, whether that is from you dispensing it, you receiving it in from your vendor, or you adjusting the on-hand manually by adding a variance onto the item. And then in addition to that, it will also cause this item to appear, of course, on your controlled substance report where you'd see all of those changes. AVImark has 4 hard-coded fees that you can use on your treatments and your items, and they're all triggered by action codes. So the first one you have is your handling fee, which is triggered by giving an item the H action code. The second is your intramuscular injection fee, which is triggered by the M. You have a prescription fee, which is triggered by the P action code. And in your inventory list, your V action code will trigger your intravenous injection fee. Now, these fees are all set up in your advanced options, which is in another area in AVImark.
There's also a code that makes it a prescribed medication, doesn't it? Or is that just the prescription fee?
It's just the prescription fee does that too.
So you have to have that code on there for it to show up on the RX tab down here, right?
That's one way. Not necessarily, because if you had a prescription fee, but you had an item that you considered a prescription and you wanted it to show on your RX tab, but you didn't want to charge that fee on it, what you could also do is just make sure that your category names in the instance of your RX tab contain either the word prescript or pharm, as in PHARM, and that will cause everything in that category to appear on your RX tab as well. So there are additional ways. Having the P action code will make it show there for sure, but in the case that maybe you didn't want to charge that additional fee, you can just change the name of the whole category as well.
Okay, so
Does that make sense?
yes, it does. My plan is not to use the prescription fee. I'll set the prescription fee as 0, and we'll use
Oh, yep.
to get it into the RX code. I set up, and I know I'm going to take over for a second. I set up 3 different.
Special fees. Okay.
So we have a counted medication, a controlled medication, and a label only medication. Now, my understanding is because these are set in the system tables, that will all be wiped out with our
With your final.
right. But if I put this in here and it wipes out the stuff, what happens to does it break something or will it just go back to?
It just makes it blank. So when you get your final, you'll create those again in system tables and you'll have to link them again.
Okay.
It won't like relink up.
So if I've already done some inventory items and put the appropriate fee on there, will it erase it?
It will erase it.
If you attached it,
So anything that is in the system tables gets wiped. The fees are in the system tables, but the action codes, anything else that you did here will remain. Correct?
yes. The only other thing that will get overridden with the final that you may have perhaps done is if you save any drug labels to items. Since that's a note file, technically, all notes get overridden. So you would have had to do those again. Have you done any of them?
I did. Now, will the prescription labels themselves get overwritten, and I'll have to do them again?
Yes.
Oh, damn! I wish they would have told me that, but okay.
And if you set up any kind of, I mean, honestly, any notes, so that would be any kind of instruction. If you did any doctor's instructions on any of your services, then that would get overridden too.
Okay.
You should have. Did you get a list of things that get overridden with the final?
I might have. I don't remember.
Okay.
I was
Okay. I mean,
just some files.
you get a lot of stuff.
Files gets overwritten.
Say that one more time. It broke up a little bit. I apologize.
Anything in the system file gets overwritten.
Anything in system tables does. Any notes will. Your clients would be overridden if you added any clients into the database, just to test and play with after your final pass or after your first pass. When you get your final, those would be overridden too. Okay. But I would say the main things and don't put any glossary entries in either.
Right.
Until after your final.
Will the initial code number, will the computer assign it a code number, or is that something we type in?
It won't. You'll have to assign it yourself.
So I can tell you that I'm working in the 20,000s, trying to keep them. Our codes are not well grouped.
Right. They were in the beginning, but
and then yeah. So I'm going through, and we're making a lot of these things obsolete, and trying to clean up our code list. So we'll do that. But go ahead, Beth. I'm sorry, we're kind of diverging.
No, you're fine. So the next one I want to point out is you also have your tax action codes in here. You have your L, which would tell AVImark that this item's only subject to local sales tax. You have your S, which would tell it it's subject to only state. And then you have a T, which would say it would be subject to both. So instead of putting your S and an L on an item, you could just put the T and apply both tax rates.
And I think what I was doing was putting the P, the A, and the T action code on all prescriptions.
Oh, good. Now you've got a Z action code in here, which would just tell AVImark that the item is a dietary item, and that will cause it to appear down on your Diets Medical View tab here at the bottom. And here you've got your obsolete item action code, the dash symbol. In AVImark, and this probably isn't the first time you've heard this, Andy, we never recommend deleting a code you've ever used in the past.
Right.
Because if you do, you'll lose all of the history associated with it.
Like
so what we would recommend instead is marking it obsolete and then creating potentially just an obsolete category in your inventory list and then moving those items in there. You do have a way, if you notice a code did get deleted, to undelete it also. But then the last one I want to point out, because like I said, a lot of these are repeated in your treatment list, is this open parenthesis action code, which tells AVImark to control the refills of this item. And it works in conjunction with settings that you would set on your pharmacy tab here. So we're going to get to that here in a few minutes. Now you can add up to 8 action codes on an item at a time. So don't think that you can only make a few selections. You've got the ability to choose 8. Your price here is where you're telling AVImark how much one sellable unit of this item needs to be charged to the client. This discount class field is part of the automatic discounting in AVImark. By default, all of your treatments fall into this 11 discount class. I'm so sorry, I said that wrong. All of your inventory items fall into this 11 discount class, and all of your treatments would fall into the 1. Report codes are ways for you to group items or treatments together by giving them all the same letter report code, and then tell AVImark to include only items that have that report code on certain reports. So like if you wanted to see your income generated for your diets, you could create a report code to represent your diets and then run your income by treatment report by that report code and only see your diet items on there. Now when it comes to report codes, each clinic creates them on their own, so they have their own meanings depending on what the clinic wants to use them for. So it's not going to be something that you would be able to call support and say, oh, hey, what's my Z report code for? They're not going to know. So what I would suggest, Andy, if you decide to use this feature, is once you assign a report code to a certain item or treatment, maybe go into your Q&A in AVImark and just type in there the Z report codes for this.
Okay.
Now that being said, there are 5 report codes that have predefined meanings in AVImark, so you wouldn't want to use them for anything else. They are the L report code, that's for your labs. The I report code is for your injections. The S report code is for your surgeries. The P is for prescriptions, and the V is for vaccines. But any of the other 21 letters in the alphabet are up for grabs and can be used for whatever you'd like.
Okay.
Now here you've got a cost and a package cost, and this is just where you're telling AVImark either how much one sellable unit of this item cost you from your vendor, or how much the entire package of this item cost you from your vendor. Now, whenever you're first creating your item, you want to come over here to your purchasing tab, and again, we're going to get to that here in a little bit, but when you set your purchasing tab up correctly, it will make your cost and package cost be correct as well. Here you have your measure, where you're basically telling AVImark how you dispense this item, and it's very important that at least for all of your prescriptions that you print drug labels out for, you have something in this measure, because whatever's in the measure is going to print out on your drug label. So if it's something that you sell by the tablet, make sure you have tablets chosen. Otherwise, if you leave it just as none, it would say 24 none as a quantity dispensed. Here's your special fee drop-down, and this is a feature specifically just for inventory, and it looks like you guys already know what this is. You can create your own fees and system tables and attach them to an item this way. In your photo field, you have the ability of taking a picture of the item if you'd like and attaching it so you can see what this item looks like. Category is just showing you the category that this item is currently in, and this is one way that you could change the category if you'd like by selecting a different one from the drop-down. Expires is where you're typing in the expiration date of this item. Now, notice that there's just one expiration date field here, so you want to make sure that you're putting in the date for the bottle or the pack that you're actually on right now. If you had multiple contain...
Go through a bottle?
I'm sorry?
You have to change that every time you go through a bottle?
If they have different expiration dates, yes. Now, over here on your pharmacy tab, there is a container feature that you can use as sort of a memory trigger, where you tell it in container number 1, I have this many sellable units left. Once you sold all of those, it would bring up a box that says, do you want to open another container? And that's sort of your memory trigger. I need to go update my expiration date. Expires in is referring to the actual prescription. Once you prescribe it, how long is that prescription good for? UPC, really you only want to fill this out if you are using the barcode scanning feature in AVImark. If you're not, I wouldn't even take the time to fill that field out because that's the only thing it works with. MSDS is where you're able to type in the page number that this drug's information appears on in your drug book. And here you've got your break quantity price fields. This was utilized when it was first created in AVImark as a spot to give clinics the ability to tell AVImark if a client bought something in bulk to charge them a bit of a price break, which that's still what you can use it for. You just type in the quantity that they would have to buy in the first field, and then in the second field you'd type in the price that you would want to charge them if they bought that quantity. Now also, clinics are using this feature for their prevention items as well, so that they can have accurate on-hand counts. So what they'll do is they'll set their prevention items up to reflect being sold by the individual monthly dose if they ever break the prevention down like that. Their on-hand would say how many monthly doses they have on hand. And then in the break quantity price field, they would say, okay, if they buy 6, then instead of charging what 6 times the price would be, I want to charge this dollar amount instead. Because typically what clinics do when they sell it by the monthly dose, they mark that price up quite a bit because you're running the risk of the rest of that box expiring before you sell it. Does that make sense? Fairly?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. All right, I didn't hear anything. That way, because in AVImark we can't have necessarily 3 different items taking away from one on hand, so to speak. Here you have your markup percent, where this is where you're telling AVImark that you always want your price to be this % higher than your cost. So all you have to do is whenever you update your cost, it'll increase your price accordingly. Your markup unit cost and markup package cost are fields that AVImark populates for you on its own, and it's just going to show the highest that you have ever paid for this item. You can make your items species specific and sex specific, and you can even always tell them to go into medical history under a certain doctor. All right. Now your advanced tab is where you're going to go mainly to set up a follow-up on this item if you wanted there to be one. Remember, your follow-up list is basically your callback feature in AVImark. Contract prices is just going to allow you to say a certain client or any client that you put in this group can get this item at a certain price. Your Documents tab will allow you to attach a document to an item and have that print out behind the invoice every time this item's invoiced out. This is usually a feature utilized more in your treatment list, but I have seen clinics that go through the process of typing up a document to print out that has side effects or things to look out for certain medications. If you do that, this is where you would go to attach it. And then here you have your Pharmacy tab. This is where you're going to be able to go to set those refill parameters. So you can tell the program that the patient has to wait a certain number of months between refills unless they get a certain treatment code, and you would type the treatment code right here. Or you could just tell the program that they have to wait a certain number of days between refills. Then here's that container feature where you could say, okay, in container number 1, I have this many sellable units left. So you can have that memory trigger when you need to update the expiration date.
What happens if you have multiple containers of it?
If they're all open?
No, like if you've got, like talking about a Moxie, you've got a bottle of 500. Shouldn't we, as we check these in, they should be going into inventory.
They will be.
So
this is where you would just tell it the first time, in the container that I'm on right now, I just have this many units left in it. And then whenever it pops up asking you, do you want to open another container? It's going to say, because here on the purchasing tab, you would tell it that there are 500 sellable units in a bottle. So the width for container number 2 would automatically just be 500.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Will it show, is there any, on the general tab, it showed us what we have on hand, right? Okay. And that pulls off.
So if you had, I apologize. Can you say that again?
That pulls off the purchasing tab also. So it pulls off your pharmacy tab for what you have on your current container, and off the purchasing tab for what's in your back stock.
Right, as long as you're, of course, receiving it in on purchase orders. Correct.
Right.
Okay. Now your purchasing tab. This is probably a very close second to being the most important tab in here. And if you're wanting to utilize the purchase order feature, which I hope you guys do, it's going to be very important. So just disclaimer, I jump around in this window because I like to go in order of importance. First field that I want to talk about is this order pack. This is the field that you put in how many sellable units come in a package of how you order this from your vendor. So just like you said, if this were a bottle of pills that came 500 pills in a bottle, and I dispensed it by the pill, then my order pack would be 500. If it was that same bottle of pills, so to speak, and I sold it by the entire bottle, then my order pack would be 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if we take it kind of a step further and we go back to talking about how you can set up preventions, if you're selling it by that monthly dose, and there were, say, 6 monthly doses in a sleeve, and there were 10 sleeves in a package, then the order pack for that would be 60. Okay? Now, your order quantity is where you tell AVImark, by default, every time I order this item, I want to order this amount. So a good rule of thumb for your order quantity, it is always going to be either equal to or a multiple of your order pack. So if I always wanted to order 1 bottle of this item, I would make my order quantity 500. If I always wanted to order 2 bottles, I would make it 1,000. And then whenever I put it on a purchase order, it would default to ordering 1,000 each time if I left it like this. Your order point is where you tell AVImark the number you want your on-hand to reach before it alerts you that you need to order it. And when I say it alerts you, what it does is it will cause this item to appear red in your inventory list, and it also causes it to appear on your reorder report. So we'll make this 100 just as an example. Your on order field is another field AVImark populates for you on its own, and it's going to show you the amount of this item that is currently sitting on a purchase order waiting to be received in. So ultimately, you've already ordered it from your vendor. Average unit cost and average package cost are more fields AVImark populates for you on its own. and it's going to show you the average that you've spent on this item. You can attach a specific vendor to your items as well. If you ever shop around, though, and don't order things from the same vendor each time, it probably wouldn't be that beneficial. Last PO is going to show you the last time this item was received in on a purchase order. And this manufacturer number is just a field where you could potentially type in this item's number from your vendor as well, so you can cross-reference easier. But again, if you shop around for this and you don't always order it from the same vendor, kind of not as useful.
So we pretty much just use Henry Schein for what, 90% of what we order. So that was one of the reasons that we chose AVImark was integration with Henry Schein.
Yeah. The intelligent inventory, is that what you're going to use?
Yes.
Nice. So yeah, you'll be able to attach Henry Schein as your vendor for everything. You should have it in here, I'm sure, probably. And then you would be able to attach your manufacturer number. But for the intelligent inventory integration, you're on each of your items, and whenever you sign up for intelligent inventory, you're going to get assigned a tech to help you get it installed and help walk you through the majority of the setup. But you have to cross-reference your item to know, so that AVImark knows which item from the Henry Schein site it is linked to, so to speak. But again, that's something that the support will help you with whenever you get to that point. Now here you have your allocated quantity. And what this is designed for is to show you, it's a field again, AVImark populates for you on its own, and you never want to change this manually unless support tells you to. But it's just showing you the amount of this item currently sitting unposted in a patient's medical history. Because the way that the on-hand calculation works in AVImark, when you place an item into medical history here, it doesn't deduct from your on-hand count until it's been fully posted to accounting. So if I had these tablets and my on-hand was 50, and I put 10 on Gemma, and we haven't taken payment for it yet, my on-hand would still read 50, but my allocated quantity would read 10. And then as soon as I posted it to accounting, my allocated quantity would go back to 0, and my on-hand at that point would go to 40. Now the reason that I'm pointing this out is because this allocated quantity will sometimes become a bit of a hurdle whenever clinics are trying to do their inventory counts, and they'll see the amount on their shelf does not match what their amount in the on-hand in AVImark says, and 99% of the time your allocated quantity is the culprit.
Okay.
So essentially, the amount on your shelf plus what's in your allocated quantity should equal out what your on-hand is. And even that being said, your on-hand minus your allocated should equal what's on your shelf. Okay?
Okay. So I guess anything that, like when we do this, when we do the data conversion, anything that is in a work file will go into this unposted. So that should adjust our allocated quantity. So we have to remember that when we're doing our inventory to set this up on the 29th, when we're doing our actual count, that we look at both of those. Because we should, then it should be that we'll have more on hand. We'll have more on hand in the computer than we actually have sitting on the shelf, because some of it will be in the bags ready to go.
So are we going to count the bags that are on the shelf?
No.
Okay.
No, we're not.
And Andy,
Go ahead.
Sorry, can I say something? You might check with conversion. I don't know how it looks whenever you bag up the prescriptions and you're waiting for the client to pick them up in your other software. If it shows as if it will convert as a posted transaction, you might check with conversion to see if they know that answer And then you'll have a better idea of how you want to put those on-hands in.
Yep. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry. Done interrupting. All right, your sales tab here.
Go back to purchasing.
Uh-huh.
What's the none in the upper right-hand corner?
It's a non-functioning field.
Okay. And
So it's probably added in right now maybe for something in the future.
okay. So
it's not functioning yet.
I want all of our inventory to be set up to be quantity specific. It used to be that our injections were just a flat injection fee. So I want to set up injections to have the injection fee cost and then the cost of the medication by volume plus a markup. So
I'm sorry. I did some of them. So if you haven't looked at some of the ones I did, maybe she can tell me if I did it right.
Which one would be one?
There should be an account in there called injectables. On your category, if you scroll down one. That I put in there.
Okay.
So some of them I put in like the antecedent per ml. Try that one. Looks
Okay. So this is our price for a bottle?
The top line should be the price that we're charging the client per cc.
Oh, okay. This is the cost per bottle, $16.17. Yeah, but
go down. That's the cost of a bottle.
Okay, so it's 10 mLs in a bottle.
Yep.
Okay. And so we would need we've got this is M is for intermuscular, is that right?
Mhm.
And a T for tax because.
Right.
And that's all I put on there. Does that?
But now for this to be, I wouldn't consider this an RX. This would go under injections, right? So there's an injection tab there. So the M, we'll put it in the injections tab, right?
It should.
Okay.
Or the fact that it's in a category that contains the word inject will as well.
But see, you set the price. If I want it to set the price automatically, you have to set the item's cost higher than its price. What did I do?
Go back. Just go back in there. The auto markup should be already in there. Oh, I didn't do
Markup.
that. Did you do that?
I just did that. There was 0. So where did I get wrong, Beth?
Well, what happens whenever you're putting the markups in, it's not going to adjust the price until you adjust that cost for the first time. So like right now, we already had the cost in of $16.17 per unit.
Uh-huh.
And now, like if we changed it to $16.18, just for example, and we hit OK, it would automatically increase your price for you at that point. But it's because when you enter in that markup percent the first time, it hasn't had a chance to save it on that item yet. So that's why it didn't adjust your price that moment.
So what if I just typed in 1617 again?
Oh, well, I think we forgot to hit the 1. So now.
Hit 1 what?
Is it 17 or 70? I thought that it was 1617.
Okay. Okay.
So let me just set this right back down here real quick.
So that markup unit cost, doesn't that just pull from your cost?
It shows it's going to save the highest that you've ever spent. So like if you receive this on a purchase order next time and the price goes down to $15, your markup unit is still going to say $16.17 because ultimately that's the highest you've ever paid.
Okay.
It'll never lower.
Right. And it'll never mark your price down either. So if we had it marked up 100% and it was the 35 whatever it was originally. If the cost from your vendor went down to $150 per bottle, then it would decrease your cost, but it would leave your price the same.
So when we are setting these up, we need to do it in a specific order?
At least before you put your cost in, put in your markup percent first, save it, and then go back in and put in your actual cost so it'll update your price accordingly.
But now I thought it was calculating the cost per unit based on the stuff that we put in the purchasing tab.
It is.
So why are we
I'm just saying
in the cost field? We shouldn't. We shouldn't have to.
It defaults on there, but I already had it.
Well, with your purchasing tab set properly, it's going, when you put your cost in, it's going to make your package cost correct. Or if you put the package cost in, it's going to make your individual cost correct. But if you want your price to get marked up, you want to make sure when you're creating a new item that you just put this markup percent in first and then hit OK so it has a moment to save it, and then go back in and enter in your cost so that your price will get marked up.
We're changing items that are already in there. So like, I'm frustrated now because it's not doing what I want it to do. Show me that it calculates the price for me.
Okay. So like right now, if we said that it cost $16.18, since this 100%'s already been saved, when I hit OK and OK again, it's increasing that price for me.
Okay.
So I could hit yes.
Now, Beth,
And I go back in, and it's there. Yes, ma'am.
my question is I can set up a markup percent under the category field, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we close back out, and then it'll just do it on all of them.
Yep.
We wouldn't necessarily have to go by one. Or do we need to?
Right. If everything in a category could have the same markup percent,
Okay.
then instead of putting it on each item individually, you can just put it on the entire category.
Okay.
So as you're going in and making sure that your costs are correct, it might be more beneficial to just, if everything can be the same markup percent, to just put it on the entire category.
Okay. Now, which one?
Does that make sense?
Which one would it default to if they're both there? If both markups.
It should look at whichever one's higher.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, but it didn't there because we put a markup of 100%, and it's not. We've got a markup on the category of 120%.
I can get with support and see if something's changed in an update. I know earlier versions of AVImark it was whichever's higher, but if now if the category overrides the individual item, I can verify that for you.
Is there a way on the injectables like that antecedent to put a minimum price also?
That's what these hard-coded fees will do for you. Inside of your advanced options, I know you said you weren't using them, but even inside of system tables, when you were setting up those special fees, you've got a minimum option here. So basically, if anything has a dispensing fee, it's going to give it a fee of $10, or if the price wouldn't equal out $10, it would charge a minimum of $10.
Okay. So with the injections, I can do the same thing?
Yeah, you could in your injections, if you made a special fee for that, you don't even necessarily have to put anything in the regular fee field. You could just put something in the minimum and then attach it to the item, and it would always charge that minimum fee unless the quantity dispensed would be more than what the minimum fee is. Which for an injectable, I wouldn't think it would be that way, but does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at it. It's like right now our injections are what, $29? We said. So I would never want, as we change this, to have an injection be sold for less than $29.
Okay. So in here, you would just make that new injection fee, and in the minimum, put in $29.
Okay. And then we have to attach that special fee on there.
Yes. So then you'd have to go to each of your injectables in your inventory list and attach that fee
Okay.
after your final.
Beth, is there any way can we apply that fee to all of them at the same time? Isn't there a way if you want to highlight all of the injectables essentially, and then does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know it works with other
Sorry, I'm scooching over.
moving drugs from one category to another.
So I'll just let me pull out the action codes column, because you can, but you can also mess things up if you do things this way, if you don't understand how it's fully going to work.
Okay.
So for example, I know I'm in the anesthesia column in here, but see how all of these have different action codes? You never want to do this trick when it comes to adding action codes.
Okay.
So I'll show you how you can do it if you promise never to do it for action code. Reason being is because it will change them all. If you click on the top one and hold down shift and click on the bottom one,
right,
you could do a right click change and then assign that fee to all of them at once. You would just select it from your fee drop down. But I don't want you to think that that will work for like adding an action code, so to speak. So like right now, see how some of these don't have, like if we wanted these to all prompt for a drug label, for example.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to say add an A to all of these.
Understood.
If we highlighted them all, it would change all the action codes to be exactly the same, which a lot of times you don't want to do.
Understood.
All right. I know that sounded a little silly, but I've worked with clinics that have done that, and they did it to, their largest categories in their entire list, and it really messed things up. All right. So you can do it if you do it just for that special fee drop down.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, so I don't think we had that many more tabs left to go through in here. Do you have any other questions about your purchasing tab?
The intelligent inventory, there's a whole nother setup. You can't use purchase orders and stuff like that without intelligent inventory.
Well, what the benefit of using intelligent inventory does is basically it will, when you put your order in on henryschein.com, then it's going to build that order and put it into the intelligent inventory cloud for you, basically. And then from that cloud, you're importing it into your AVImark, and the purchase order is already created. So all you have to do basically is receive it in.
There's a want list too, right? Or like.
Yep, a needs list. Yep.
Yeah. And you can't take your needs list and transfer it to a purchase order and send it to Henry Schein?
Well, actually, you can do it both ways. If you make a needs list and just name it Henry Schein. Once you put your items on it, you see this Henry Schein Animal Health option here at the top. You could click on that and upload your needs list directly into your Henry Schein shopping cart. And then at that point, of course, it'll
automatically pull anything that is at our reorder point, right?
In your needs list, it wouldn't, but if you made an order, if we did file order new, and you said all items from this category and selected a specific one, or you just said all items from all categories, then that option would build a purchase order and have all items whose on hands have fallen beneath their order point. So let it come up here. So then, once you've gotten this order built, you would be able to do the same thing. Click on this Henry Schein Animal Health, and then it would upload it straight into your shopping cart on the Henry Schein order site.
And is that with the intelligent inventory, or that's just with what we've got already?
No, that is strictly just with intelligent inventory.
Okay.
As of right now, we can't upload directly to the Henry Schein shopping cart.
Okay, only intelligent
until
inventory.
you set that up. Yes. And I'm going to delete that order out real fast. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But yeah, once you install and start running Intelligent Inventory, you'll have options to upload to your shopping cart from both of those two areas. All right, so now your sales tab here is just showing you your quantity sold and dollar amount sales month to date and year to date, and then both of those options for the last 12 months. And then your Remind As tab has to do with the reminder feature, and it just gives you the ability to tell AVImark, if I give this item, I want to remind as though I gave something else. Which when you say it like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but basically, for example, if you had a reminder on your annual blood work code, so to speak, and then you had a drug that after they've been prescribed that drug, you wanted to remind them to come back in and get blood work, you'd be able to tell AVImark to remind as your blood work code right here. And then whenever you gave this item, a reminder for blood work would be generated.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that Remind As works. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in here, in your actual list, you have a few right-click options that I'd like to point out. You have the ability, recently AVImark's been enhanced to allow you to attach alerts to items, so that when you put it in medical history, an alert window would come up, and a lot of clinics will use this for recommendations. So like if they sold a prevention that only covers flea and tick, you could add an alert to it that says, prevention does not cover heartworms, recommend heartworm prevention. That way, maybe you have a front desk staff that's just not as medically savvy. They'd be able to know that without having to, by just simply putting the code in medical history. But again, since an alert contains notes, you wouldn't want to do any of those until after your final. Same with your drug label, but I do want to show you how you can save label text to items. If you went to the item you wanted to save your drug label on, and you right-clicked on it and selected drug label, you would type your label text in here,
Or,
and then, right, you'd be able to select one that you've already had saved too, and then just go to labels at the top and select save, and that would save it on that item. Of course, this would work in conjunction with your A action code. So if the item had a saved label and the A action code, when you placed it in medical history, it would bring up that drug label with that text already in there. You have instructions, which would just be invoice instructions that would print out on your invoice every time you dispensed this item. You have your PO history, so you would be able to see the order history of just this individual item and the price history of just this individual item. Your undelete option is what you would be clicking on to start undeleting an item if it ever got deleted. And I'm going to come back to variants, but your who got is going to just show you a list of everyone who's ever gotten this code as well. And from here, you can left click on a patient and select go to pull up their file in AVImark as well.
what was the mixture? There was one there that said mixture.
If you have, with this mixture, what it allows you to do is basically if you have any kind of cocktail codes, so to speak, like a ketamine diazepam combination, you could, on the combination code, go to mixture and basically say every time I give this code, I'm using this much ketamine and then this much diazepam. So it would deduct from your on hands correctly for you without you having to remember to go back and do it for those other two items.
So now, I'm going to take over for a minute. Where was I? Location. This is. Do we go over at some point in time? We'll go over how to set up treatment items too.
Yeah.
So, like, this is something that I did, Kenny, and we've got to talk about this. I put associated entries in here for this treatment item so that it will pull inventory when you give, like, this one is IV fluids. So the way I've got it set up is that, what's the code? 811. You enter that, and then it's going to ask you. See, I don't know why we have a follow up on this. It'll ask you what you want to use. The quantity is set at 0. We'll say, I'm using norm R. So it will deduct from our inventory. We can do that for codes like injectable anesthesia, euthanasia, those types of things. I'm sorry, it's totally off the topic, but
No, it's okay.
so I guess what I was asking is that mixture thing is kind of like adding inventory to treatment too, right? But I guess you're putting in code for 2 or more inventory items.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I think the way that you've got it set up right now, though, is, in my opinion, more efficient. The mixture is really just for when you are dispensing an item straight from your inventory list if it needs to pull from 2 on-hands to create it, so to speak.
Like our Triz EDTA with Baytril added and something else added. Mm-hmm. That would be great.
Okay. And will it calculate a price based on how much of each you're doing?
It wouldn't. Not with the mixture. It would just strictly charge whatever you had the price of that combination code to be.
Okay.
Whenever you do the fluids like that, will it be made up where it's going to take away a primary IV line and an extension set?
That's what I was thinking. Yes, we can.
We can do that.
Specific catheter size and.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. So you order IV fluids, and then you've got to choose Normasol, and I'm using a 22 gauge catheter and stuff like that.
I mean, if we wanted to take inventory that precise, AVImark lets us do that.
I'm not, just like I was thinking about syringes. It's very hard to track. I mean, you could add a syringe to every injectable drug, but there's a couple things you never know what size syringe they're using. Like that.
Now, is this going to be set up like ours in VTech where you do a puppy visit? Is it going to take out a distemper vaccine?
It can be
so it's like
associated codes.
Yes. So what is it? It's 1 is the code, isn't it? Treatment. It's under group services. 1 is the code, and it pulled over all of our associated items. Now, the way that we can do this, we can set it up to where it'll ask you when you pull this up now, it'll ask you what you're going to give, I think. Cancel. So so here, and you can say we're not doing that one, right? Wait, is there? No, I'm adding them. Shit.
Yeah, if you when you're selecting them in this method, this is the pick list feature in AVImark.
Right,
you're simply just saying, okay, I'm doing this one, and you'd click on it, and this one, and click on it.
Okay. We could do it.
And then everything under selected goes in medical history.
Or we could have it throw them all in there, and they go and delete it out of here. I think this makes more sense.
That looks pretty good too.
And that way you can say we're sending the fecal to Antec, so on and so forth. Okay. What else is there to show us in inventory?
All right, so I was going to show you how you do a variance on your controlled substances. So if you ever need to account for basically discarding it, whether it's just been it's unfit for use or it's expired, because you have to account for that, you're going to go into your inventory list and find that controlled substance and right-click on it and come down to your variance option. I know that's not controlled, but. And then at this point, you're going to right-click in here in your variance window and go to New. And then in your change, you're basically going to be typing in a negative however much you're discarding. And you've got a reason drop down here that you can select why you're discarding it. And this drop down is customizable too, so if you wanted to add to this, you could. It's all done in system tables.
Kenny was using it.
And then it's not 100% necessary, but if it were me and I like to cover all of my bases, you can even come down here and type in a note about why you're discarding it also. But then as soon as you hit OK, it's going to deduct that amount from your on hand, and it's going to print that change on your controlled substance report as well.
So how many practices do you know that are using AVImark's controlled substance log and no paper log?
A lot of them are.
Oh.
I don't have a number for you, but a lot of clinics are using just the controlled substance in AVImark. There are some that use both and use it as kind of a checks and balances, so to speak, because ultimately, with the AVImark one, and I don't mean for this to sound rude, there's less room for user error, like forgetting to write it down.
Absolutely.
Because you're putting it, as long as you're putting it in medical history and posting it to accounting, it's showing on that report. As long as you're receiving the product in from your vendor through the purchase orders, it's going to show on that report. The only thing you have to make sure that's done ahead of time is that that item has the C action code on it.
We're going that route.
So first year we'll stop using the drug book?
Yep.
Okay. So then my only concern is because with our euthanasia packages, we don't typically track it.
Well, we'll put it in here where they put in the volume.
Okay.
So under euthanasia, I think euthanasia is a treatment.
Yeah, probably. So we'll just do it as an associated
Euthanasia,
item.
yeah. So it'll go here. It'll go associated item, new.
Euthasol. I don't know if I put it in for CC yet, though.
Is it euthanasia or is it
it would be that one. Or like you could change it to somnosol, euthanasia solution per CC, and then
0. Okay, and then prompt for associated entries, right? Or is it allow override?
Allow override.
Allow override. Now, if we
Poor Gemma.
Yeah, it's been a rough week.
Yeah, just click yes to that.
Oh, well.
Or not.
So now we'll put in the quantity that we use.
And it also has the option where you can put the bottle number or the container. Is that the same? Is that bottle number or container number? Is that considered the same?
It should be, yeah, it should show if you have the container attached, it should show that number in there that you're on currently.
Okay.
There we go. Bring her back. You perform miracles.
There we go.
All right. Now, do you want to go over purchase orders since you're going to be, your process will essentially be different once you start using intelligent inventory?
I sent I sent Bo an email telling him to send me all the information. I thought I got it. Everything that I needed was already lumped together and we were good to go. And then I just found out I've got to sign a agreement for rapport, and I'm sure I have to sign an agreement for intelligent inventory too.
I mean, intelligent inventory is a free integration with AVImark. So the only thing that I believe you should have to do is go to intelligentinventory.com and just register for it. And by doing that, our support department gets a notification. So they will be having a technician contact you to set up an appointment to basically install Intelligent Inventory Service.
Okay, just intelligentinventory.com. Is that the website?
That should be it. It's yes.
Okay. It looks like we're out of time. You got to go?
Oh, well, I mean, if you guys have a few other questions, I don't have a training that backs up this one, so to speak, for another about 15 minutes. But let's see here when your next session's scheduled.
Should be next week, right?
Looks like, let me look here, that this was the last one. Do you mind if I take a look at the schedule and send you an email of some days that are open?
That would be great.
Is that all right?
Yes.
I'll do that right now.
Okay.